This is part two of the lecture series talking about distortion and lies of the far right. Another claim of the far right that you must have seen on Twitter and other social media forums is the Islamist. They talked a lot about Islamist, and of course, no man with a modicum of common sense will endorse the agenda of the Islamist. Islamists, like the far right activists, they are also the forces of divisiveness. They also want to divide society. If they are talking about the imposition of caliphate, if they are talking about Sharia law and all that thing, most of the Muslim do not endorse that, and no man with a modicum of common sense will approve it. But what they do not tell an ordinary British person, that how did this phenomenon of Islamic fundamentalism emerge. So let's talk about the icon of the British far right. Many British far right leaders, including Tommy Robinson, they heap eulogies on Margaret Thatcher, and they seem to be suggesting that she is their icon. So you can go to YouTube and you can see that she did address Afghan Mujahideen, and she and Reagan, in fact, supported these fundamentalists. And what were they opposing? What type of government was there in Afghanistan during the decade of 70s? And what did that government particularly do that offend these fundamentalists who were supported by Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan? You can look at old pictures, and even on YouTube, Ronald Reagan received these fundamentalists in the White House. Henry Kissinger's and Brzezinski and other people, they are on record saying that the West supported them because they wanted to defeat the Soviet Union there. And basically, these fundamentalists were enemies of the Soviet Union. That's why Margaret Thatcher and Reagan both supported them. So the government that they were opposing in Afghanistan banned child marriages. In Afghanistan, there were certain areas where girls as old as 12 years or 13 years could be married off. So that revolutionary government banned it. They also banned interest system. They carried out land reforms, or rather, they tried to carry out land reforms, because more than 80% Afghans' arable land was owned by or captured by 6 or 7% tribal lords who were very reactionary. When the government tried to carry out those land reforms, these mullah revolted against them, these reactionary forces revolted against them. That government also established more than 22 higher educational institutions. It encouraged women in public sectors and universities. The number of women studying in universities and colleges, it dramatically increased. And these all things did not go down well. One of the so-called Mujahid leaders was accused of trying to throw acid towards a woman who was not wearing hijab. So these were the people who were supported in reality, or the people who subscribed to the ideology of these fundamentalists. They were supported by Margaret Thatcher. They were supported by Reagan. And Brzezinski had said in one of his interviews to Le Monde newspaper back during the decades of 1990s that the United States had started supporting these Afghan fanatics 6 months prior to Soviet invasion, because they wanted to give an impression that United States was about to do something in Afghanistan so that it could prompt Soviet Union to intervene there, and then the US could settle the accounts of the Vietnam, because during the Vietnam, the USSR was accused of supporting the communists there. So when far right talk about these Islamists, they do not tell that their beloved leader Margaret Thatcher supported them. And it was not only during the Afghan Jihad. Uh, you can also see that the West also supported Chechen fundamentalists who were fighting Russians because they were against Russia. In the same way, they also supported Islamists in Yugoslavia, again, because they were against Milosevic, who was, of course, a brutal dictator. Then, in recent times, during the Tory party government or Conservative Party government after 2011, they supported fundamentalists in Syria. Why? Because they were mainly opposed to Bashar al Assad, who was a secular dictator. So they supported elements who were fighting Bashar al Assad. And naturally, the most prominent group that was fighting Bashar al Assad was Al Nusra Front and Daesh or Islamic State. These fundamentalists were fighting. And even today, you could see that two most brutal government or two governments that are led by fanatical elements that are still being supported by the United States and the West. One of them is Afghan Taliban, who have turned the entire country a prison for women. They cannot get higher education, they cannot do any job, they cannot venture out without a man, and they cannot even, they went to the extent of suggesting that women should not have even fresh air. Their houses or homes should be constructed in a way that they could not have even proper ventilation. And who is providing the biggest chunk of aid? American government. Another fundamentalist who is heading Syrian government, he was a terrorist. He was the founder of Al Qaeda. He was then another. He was then a top leaders of Daesh or Islamic State, and he was also a leader of Al Nusra Front. Ahmad Shara Jolani, terrorist Ahmad Shara Jolani. He is now heading Syrian government, and who is supporting him? President Trump, hobnobbed with him. Now European governments are trying to recognize this fundamentalist. So when these far right, tomorrow, if these fundamentalists turn out to be cancerous for Western societies, tomorrow these fundamentalists if these fundamentalists started created problems for Western government, then far right would again distort the facts. But in reality, if fundamentalist phenomenon is there, if there are certain groups in the UK and Western world who heap eulogies on terrorists like Osama bin Laden, they were supported in the past. Osama and other fundamentalists were supported in the past by the West when they were fighting the Soviet Union in Afghanistan. So far right would never tell you that these Afghan fundamentalists who wanted a global caliphate, who wanted their retrogressive ideology to be imposed on everyone, who did not want to give any rights to minorities, who wanted to imprison women in a way in open jail, who wanted to put curbs on women rights. This is a bitter reality, and many American and Western leaders have also admitted it. But far right will never tell you that if the phenomenon of fundamentalism is there in the Islamic world, it was because of the Western policy and their beloved leader who supported Afghan militants, Margaret Thatcher, who supported Afghan militants. And it was not here only. The West supported Mastoumi, which was a fundamentalist party in Indonesia. They supported Ikhwanul Muslimin in Egypt, again, which was a fundamentalist party. And they also supported Hizb Islami and other fanatical elements in Afghanistan, Jamaat Islami in Pakistan in one way and another way. So they supported this, and Ayatollah Kashani during the decade of 1950s in Iran. So but far right will never tell you that these fundamentalists who are creating problems for Western countries now, who are now saying in the UK that they want Sharia or global caliphate, their mentors, their ideological godfather back in 1970s and 80s were supported by Margaret Thatcher and Reagan. This is the lie. This is what far right will never tell you. So the far right also distorts fact. The ultra and conservative elements also hide facts from ordinary British people. So when they talk about Islamic fundamentalism, they should remember that it was their beloved leader, Margaret Thatcher, and her ideal leader, global leader in a way, Donald Reagan, who, through their unconditional support behind the fanatical elements who were fighting the Soviet Union in 1970s, towards the end of 1970s and in 1980s.